Richard. Richard put his phone back in his pocket as his new roommate returned from the bathroom. Richard stood against the doorway and watched him walk past and resume his seat at the wooden desk. There was a thunderstorm outside. Richard couldn't help but think how well that added to this nostalgic moment. The two roommates were frozen in their places as they listened to this loud patter of the rain outside. Thunder crashed and roared against the building. They were on the 7th floor. Travis, the roommate, had brought a small case of beer with him, which he had chosen to share with Richard. Travis laughed and grabbed his second bottle of Heineken. "You're exactly what I would expect a film student to look like," he said. "And that would be short, white, and has a big nose?" Richard asked. "Something like that. You're even dressed like one." Travis took a second to study him, and then asked, "So have you made anything yet? Do you have like a reel?" Richard thought about his answer before he spoke. He wasn't sure if he wanted to bring Young Folks Comedy with him to New York. This was his chance to start fresh with his own name, separate from the group. "Not really. I mean, I compiled a reel of some of the film projects I'd made for school. I've made some comedy skits in the past. That's about it," he said dismissively. "You said you're from here, right?" "Yep. Born and raised in the Bronx. One day I'll take you over there and introduce you to all my gay friends. They'll get a kick out of you. They love straight men. It'll be good for you, don't worry. They know a lot of hot girls," Travis said, smiling. Richard laughed uncomfortably and said, "Okay." "So we have the other roommates coming in tomorrow. That's something to look forward to," Travis said, leaning back in his small chair. "Sure. And classes start Tuesday, which is awesome. I want to learn the subway system a bit so I don't have to scramble around looking for my class." Travis waved the comment away with his hand. "Don't worry about it. It's super easy once you learn how to read the map. I'll show you tomorrow if you like." "That would be outstanding, sir," Richard said politely. Travis didn't further the subject. They both took another sip of their beer and sat in silence. Finally, Travis spoke. "Well, you seem like a pretty cool kid. I think we're going to get along pretty well." Richard smiled. "Thanks, man. I think so too. Thanks for the beer again." "More to come, I'm sure. I love beer," Travis said gaily. "Good night, new roommate." Richard took that as a signal to leave. "Good night, man." He turned into his separate room and closed the door. He didn't bother turning the light on. Richard's room had already been neatly organized. His clothes hung in the closet and dresser. His books for class were stacked neatly in the corner next to the tall bunk bed. Richard had claimed the bottom bunk, thinking that when his roommate arrived the following morning he would prefer the top anyway. Everyone likes the top bunk. He sat down on the lower bed and stretched out onto his back. It had been a long time since he had been on a twin-sized bed, though he didn't mind it. Richard put his hands behind his head and stared into the bed above him. He wondered how long it would take to miss home. He knew that in that moment he had never felt so content. He wondered if it would last. Richard thought about the day's events. His father had driven up. They had left at 10 that morning. He thought of his mother's face when he left the house. She had stood on the porch in her bare feet watching her husband and son load everything into the car. When they were done with packing, Richard jogged quickly up the steps to hug her one last time before he left. She had squeezed him harder than he could have imagined his mother was capable of. His eyes had bulged slightly. When he finally pulled away, his mother stared him right in the eyes and said, "I love you." It had unsettled Richard the whole car ride. It was very rare that his mothers ever showed expressions of love. His father had acted more normally. He smiled and joked with Rich the whole trip. They had met his new roommate together and took the short tour of his new dorm. When he saw that Richard was finally situated, his father made a small show of leaving. He walked over to his son, patted him on the back, and told him to call him if he needed anything. Then he left. That was 4 hours ago. Richard got out of his bed. He no longer wanted to consider the past. This was not the place for it. He undressed down to his boxers and undershirt and placed his traveling clothes into the brand-new portable hamper his mother had brought for him. Richard pulled the sheets of his bed back and slipped into them. He felt alone and comfortable. He smiled to himself and thought about the hundreds of nights that would be just like this one that lay before him. He closed his eyes and went to sleep. The following morning came swiftly. Richard was already awake when his second roommate arrived. His name was Jonda. Jonda was an exchange student from India and was majoring in culture and media. Richard's first impression of him was that he was quiet and polite. He came into the dorm with his father and mother, who both spoke very little English. He and Travis were to share the same room. Their beds were at separate walls of each other. Once he got his things unpacked, he and his parents left. That happened at 10. True to Travis's word, he took Rich down to the subway and went over the maps with him. Travis advised investing in a monthly Metro pass which would give Rich unlimited access to the trains. They spent around 2 hours together that morning. After the subway tour, the two stopped and got something to eat at a pizza place. Richard's bunkmate was at the door when they got back. He greeted them as they came in. "About time y'all niggas showed up. I was getting lonely in this bitch. I was this close to calling some friends over and throwing a party. This close." Rich took in the sight of him. He was a slightly overweight, bald black kid who also happened to be the gayest person Richard had ever seen. As he approached the two at the door, Richard could smell woman's perfume reeking from his body. He wore a black shirt with a neon scarf over it. His pants looked to be made out of latex. Richard's new bunkmate was a flaming black homosexual. "Welcome to New York." "Hey, sorry, Travis was just showing me around the subway tunnels," Rich said. "I'm Richard." Rich extended his hand towards the newcomer. "Oh, your name's Dick?" he purred. "Can I call you Dickie?" "Sure," Rich said automatically, not thinking. "Well, hi, Dickie. My name's Jacob." Jacob took Richard's hand and shook it daintily. He looked at Travis. "And you are?" Jacob asked. "Travis. Nice to meet you," Travis said, giving him a laid-back salute. "So which one of you is my new roomie?" Jacob asked. "That would be me," Richard said with a smile. "Great! I call top bunk." "Psych, now let me stop. You got here first, so which one do you want?" Jacob asked. "Well, I had already set up the bottom one. I'm actually kind of a fan of bottom bunk, actually," Richard chuckled lightly. "Plus, I figured everyone likes top more anyway, so it reduces the chance of an argument." Smart thinking, Dickie baby." "I like you," Jacob smiled. He had 2 rows of bright yellow teeth. Richard tried not to wince. Travis excused himself to use the bathroom while Jacob continued studying Richard. "Okay, so come sit down. I want to get to know my new roomie," Jacob said. Rich laughed and obliged. The two sat down at the round kitchen table. "So, you're obviously straight, right?" Jacob asked. Rich laughed again, somewhat uncomfortably, and replied, "Yes, I'm definitely straight." Jacob lowered his voice. "Travis isn't, right? Normally I can tell, but a guy like him, sometimes I'm wrong." Rich nodded his head. "Yeah, Travis is gay." Jacob clapped his hands in glee. "I was always guess right. You know, I was hoping to get a straight roommate," Jacob said, staring at Rich. "Really?" Rich said. He was utterly afraid as to ask why. I love straight men. Plus, now I get to hit on your friends when they come and visit. Do you have any hot ones?" he asked excitedly. I'm not really sure if I can be an accurate judge of which one of my friends is hot," Rich said. "Oh, of course not. Get out your Facebook and show me pictures. I want to look at your life," Jacob said. Again, Richard obliged. He pulled out his phone and opened up his Facebook app. Jacob snatched it from his hands greedily. Annoyance flared in Rich, but quickly subsided. Jacob scrolled through his notifications and friends list, making oohs and ahs the whole time. A moment later, Jacob handed the phone back to Rich. "Show me your close ones. Which ones are going to be visiting you?" Jacob demanded. Richard went through his friends list. He saw Joseph's name first and opened up his page and handed the phone back to Jacob. "Next! I don't like gingers and I don't like beards," Jacob said immediately. Richard laughed at that. For some reason, Jacob reminded him immensely of Shaun, though he knew Shaun would be appalled at the comparison. Richard showed him Christopher's page next. Jacob literally swooned at the sight of him, or the most literal interpretation of swooning that Richard could imagine. "Oh my God, get this boy up here tonight! I will turn him out, watch me," Jacob said as he clasped Richard's phone. "He has a girlfriend of like 4 or 5 years," Rich said. "You think I care? You act like I don't do this every week, baby. This is my hobby. Some people play soccer, other people watch TV. I fuck straight men," Jacob declared. Richard laughed generously at that. Jacob focused on going through more pictures of Chris. "Is this girl that's in all these pictures his girlfriend?" Jacob asked. Rich leaned over to see who he was talking about. "Yeah, that's Kate," he confirmed. Jacob snorted. "Oh my God. This boy can do so much better. What, are they high school sweethearts or something? He fell in love too young." He shook his head. Rich came to Kate's defense. He liked her. "She's really nice, though. Super laid back. I mean, Chris has had chances to get with hotter girls, but he always ends up going back to her in the end. I think I can understand where he's coming from," he said. Jacob gave Rich a look of disbelief. "Average. Don't ever settle for average, Dickie baby." Rich could almost swear Shaun had said the same thing to him before. His head swam from deja vu. Jacob tossed the phone back to him and demanded more. All I have left is my friend Shaun, Rich said as he pulled up his page and handed it back to Jacob. A wave of disappointment went over Jacob's face as he looked at Shaun's profile picture. He's black, he said, pouting. Richard burst out laughing. My roommate is the fat, gay version of Shaun Hunt. He shook his head at that thought and continued laughing. Shaun was notorious for never dating women of his own race. He models? Jacob asked, disinterested. Rich nodded his head. Shaun was extremely proud of his body, and fortunately for him, no one else was. When he was 18, he spent $900 on a professional photographer to take pictures of him. The two shot in a studio. Richard had been present that day and on a rooftop. The pictures came out great. Shaun's body looked great, but the only time he ever got paid for modeling was when he modeled for things such as a J.C. Penney's catalog. He remembered the day that Shaun, Joey, and he had traveled into New York to an open casting call at Ford Modeling Company. Joe and Rich waited in a coffee shop while Shaun displayed his body to talent agents. Shaun had told them afterwards that they had barely glanced at the photos before handing them back to him. That was 3 years ago. Poor Shaun. I mean, he's hot, he's got a nice body, but he's no Christopher, Jacob said after scrolling through all of Shaun's pictures. Get Christopher up here so I can work my magic. I'll do my best, Rich said. So how about you? Jacob asked and handed the phone back to Rich. He fixed his eyes on him. Where's your girlfriend? No girlfriend here, Rich said. No? Jacob stared at Rich and contemplated. He bit his lower lip and twiddled his fingers. I think I might just play matchmaker tonight, Dickie baby. You really don't need to. I'm fine, Rich said politely. Oh my God, you're so adorable. And you're so shy. I know just the girl for you. She's a good friend of mine, and she's been complaining about not having a man, Jacob said. He pulled his phone out and immediately started texting. Richard started feeling anxiety. Here was this gay stranger texting a girl Richard had never met about him. He had no clue what she looked like, and more importantly, had no clue what Jacob was saying to her. Rich tried to interject as politely as possible. Seriously, you don't have to. But. No more of that. It's already settled. Don't worry, Dickie baby. I'll take good care of you. Jacob looked up from his text and batted his eyes at Rich. The gesture made Rich flinch. Jacob's phone started ringing. It was a Chris Brown ringtone. He stood up from the table and headed into their new room together. He answered his phone with a happy "sup, bitch," and shut the door behind him. Richard stayed seated in his chair and wondered what had just transpired. He looked over at Travis, who was sitting at his desk doing something on his laptop. Rich wasn't aware of how long he had been there or if he had been listening. Travis looked at him and rolled his eyes in an exaggerated fashion, confirming Richard's suspicions. I can tell he's going to be a handful, Travis said in a low voice and smirk. Richard sighed. What the fuck am I getting into? Rich sat at the kitchen table the next night and tried to look anything but nervous. Desperate. Desperate is another vibe I don't want to give off. Jacob had just walked in with a group of young females. They were all laughing at some hilarious joke Jacob had told by the time he opened the door to the dorm. Richard glanced at them between bites of his Subway sandwich. There were 4 girls in total. 2 of them were blonde, the other 2 were brunette. Out of the 4, it was the shorter of the blondes that Richard found to be the most attractive. Her face was gorgeous. It was flawlessly clear of all blemishes. She had pale skin and straight white teeth. Richard could see all the way down her mouth when she laughed. He swallowed. He hated these situations. Still, he prayed that the girl Jacob had mentioned would be the blonde. Not that it mattered. He was sure that any interest she had in meeting him had quickly dispersed as soon as she laid eyes on Richard. He tried to let that thought relax him. He told himself that it was over before it started. That knowledge seemed to help. Richard looked up from his sandwich and smiled pleasantly at the group. Ladies, may I introduce my new roomie? Dickie, Jacob announced. You can actually just call me Rich if you like, Richard said jokingly. The girls giggled, prompting Richard to smile again. Hello, the hot blonde said. Richard's heart beat faster. Jacob glided over to the table and sat down next to Richard. He scooted his chair up next to Richard's own and put his arm around his shoulder. So, Jacob said, breathing into his face, which one do you like best? Rich almost gagged. Jacob's breath smelled horrible. He felt dizzy but knew he had to answer the ridiculous question. Look, I've always been super indecisive. Even when I go to Burger King, I'm like the guy that stares up at the menu for like 2 hours, Rich said. Another chorus of giggles erupted from the females. Jacob laughed along with them. Shut up, he said, slapping Richard's arm slightly. It doesn't matter. Only one of them is single. I was just trying to blow your spot up. Bitch, come here. Jacob beckoned one of the girls to walk forward with his fat finger. It was the shorter brunette. She rolled her eyes and obeyed Jacob's command. She walked forward and stood separate from the group rather awkwardly. She stood in the middle of the girls and the kitchen table. "You going to offer her a seat, or?" Rich asked Jacob. More laughs. Richard was proud of himself. He had garnered 3 good responses back-to-back in front of a group of girls and a gay guy. He was on his A game. The brunette giggled softly to herself. "Thank you," she said. "Jacob doesn't have any manners sometimes." She sat down at the table with the other 2. "Kayla, meet Rich. Your next fuck." "Dickie, this is Kayla," Jacob said. Richard could not believe the obnoxious bluntness of Jacob. What he was doing pissed him off to no end, and what was even worse was the fact that there was nothing he would do about it. Rich knew he wasn't going to pull him aside later and curse him out just as much as he knew that he wasn't going to say anything in that exact moment. Richard laughed uncomfortably, which was his most natural response to such a statement. Ignoring it entirely is actually a pretty good idea, he thought to himself. "Hi," he said to Kayla. Kayla glared at Jacob momentarily and then said hi to Rich. Rich took a moment to look at her. Of the 4 girls, Kayla was the least impressive. She wasn't ugly, she was just completely ordinary. She was skinny with dark brown hair. She had a small nose and brown eyes. Her face was nothing remarkable. The most positive thing there was to say about her was that she wasn't ugly. Rich wished that took the pressure off, but it didn't. "So how long did it take you to order that Subway sandwich?" Kayla asked with a smile. She had a nice smile, white teeth. "I would say a little under 2.5 hours. It was a good day for me," Rich said. Kayla laughed pleasantly. Jacob patted Richard on the back and jumped out of his chair. "I have done it again. Love at first sight. Mark my words, they will pay me for this in the future," Jacob said as he swished back and forth through the kitchen. "So are you coming out with us, Dickie baby?" Richard thought of the frugal allowance he had been given by his parents. Sure. "Where are we going?" Richard asked cautiously. "We're going to a bar down the street," the hot blonde said. "So get your ass up, Dickie," Jacob said. Rich balled up the remains of his Subway sandwich and wrapper and tossed it in the trash can. He followed the group out of the dorm and into the New York night. Jacob herded the girls ahead of him, all save one. Richard walked silently down the street. He was perfectly in sync with Kayla, matching her stride with his. "So where are you from, Dickie?" Kayla asked with a small giggle. "Oh, God, please do not start calling me that," Rich pleaded. "I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself." "Where are you from, Rich?" she asked again. "I'm from a little town in South Jersey by the name of Mount Holly," Richard said. "And what do you do in Mount Holly for fun?" Kayla asked. "I'm living a fucking teen romance flick," he answered. "A whole lot of nothing. Many nights I have suffered from boredom in that place. Have you lived in New York long?" Kayla nodded her head. "Everyone here went to the same high school together. That's how we know each other." "And you're going to—" Rich's voice trailed off. "NYU," she finished. "And since I know your next question, I might as well already tell you my major is liberal arts." Rich laughed. "Don't you hate how predictable conversations have gotten? Strangers and people you haven't seen in a long time. It's always the same conversation." "You're right. I do hate it. Let's not do it tonight. Let's put an end to it right now," she said. "From this point on, no more small talk for the rest of the night." Richard could not believe this was happening to him. Every piece of dialogue that had left his mouth from the moment the females had walked into his dorm seemed to not be coming from his brain. He felt as if his lips and body were acting on their own accord. Inside he knew that he felt extremely uncomfortable and somewhat irritated at the whole thing. It was the coolest Richard had been around new female company, separated from YFC. He took it as a good sign for his future in New York. The group walked into the bar. Jacob directed the party to the nearest high-top table available. Richard took a seat. He was aware of all the social norms he was supposed to comply with in that moment. One by one, each member of the 6-person party would have to go up and order their beer and return to the table. He knew that his turn would come soon and that the drink he ordered couldn't be water, even though he really didn't feel like spending more money. He wasn't comfortable in New York. Not yet. "How old are you?" Kayla asked Rich, breaking his train of thought. 21, Rich said calmly. "Oh my God, you're 21? This changes everything," Kayla said excitedly. Rich was slightly confused. "Tessa, guess how old Rich is," Kayla said to the other brunette. Tessa looked at Rich. Her eyes scanned his face and torso. He hated the feeling of being inspected by someone. "He's our age, isn't he?" she asked. "He's 21, Kayla said, giggling. "What?" Tessa giggled and started getting the other girls' attention. Guys. Richard is 21, she said. The females all looked at Rich and started laughing. Rich tried hard not to look embarrassed. "How old are you?" he asked Kayla. He tried to keep his voice even. "I'm 22, honey," Kayla said condescendingly. Rich was a little taken aback. He simply could not understand the humor in meeting someone who was literally only a year younger than themselves. Fucking stupid. Rich smiled graciously and said, "Yep, I'm a young infant. That's me." His voice was dry with sarcasm. "When's your birthday?" "You know what? It doesn't matter. I'm buying you a drink." "What are you getting?" Kayla asked after the laughter died down. That solves that problem, Richard thought. "I'll get whatever you're getting," Rich said. That's the cool thing to say, right? Kayla went off to flag the bartender with Jacob and one of the blondes. Rich sat directly across the table from the other two girls. They sat as comfortably as strangers sitting at a table with nothing in common could be. The place around them was buzzing with chatter. The bar was packed. One had to yell at a person 3 feet away in order to be heard. "So what's your major?" the one Rich identified as Tessa asked. "I'm going to school for film," Rich said rather loudly. "Oh, that's really cool. So you like movies?" She strained her voice to be heard over the loud chat of the bar's other occupants. "You could say that," Rich replied. This time his voice was all but drowned out. He tried again and practically yelled it. "You could say that I like movies." "What would you say?" the hot blonde, who Rich still did not know the name of, asked. Rich looked at her a moment, startled that he had fallen into a conversation with someone so beautiful. "Sorry, what?" Rich asked her. First fuck up of the night, and of course it happened with the hottest girl talks to me. She repeated her question. "You said that we could say that you like movies, but what would you say? That you love them?" Rich honestly didn't have an answer for that. He hadn't been thinking when Tessa asked him the question. All he could think of was how dumb the question was in the first place. I used to play the drums and I was pretty good at that, but I stopped doing it before I became great. I just don't want to do that again," Rich said. The two girls looked at him puzzled. They nodded their heads as if they understood him and quickly broke eye contact with him. They talked amongst themselves while they waited for the rest of the group to come back. The other three arrived shortly after, much to the salvation of Richard, who had felt like his cool streak was just about to wear out for the night. Caleb placed 2 drinks on the table in front of Richard. She grinned. "That's not a beer," Rich said. "You said you wanted whatever I got, right?" Kayla responded. "That's a sex on the beach." The girls giggled in unison as Rich tried to make the appropriate facial expression for the definitively stupid situation. He never understood female humor, and now he was at the center of it. He rolled his eyes sarcastically and said, "Thanks, I had my fingers crossed that you would order this." More giggles. Jacob looked at Kayla and Richard. "I just want to say right now that I do expect a thank you from you after you fuck my bitch, Dickie. You should be glad I'm not charging you money," Jacob said, showing his yellow teeth with a huge smile. Rich smiled politely at him as his body sank deeper down into discomfort. "One day I'm going to thank you for this. Yeah, fucking right." "I'm going to get another beer. Do you want one?" Travis asked. Richard's face snapped to attention. The two sat at the same high top Rich had been sitting in a week and a half ago. He had been thinking about his experience the night before. Jacob had brought Kayla back to their dorm. The two had exchanged numbers that night at the bar, but Richard had scarcely texted her. Classes had started, and he had become focused on getting organized for the coming semester. At least that was his excuse for Jacob. He didn't give an excuse to Kayla. So when Jacob brought her over the previous night and practically locked the bedroom door on the two, Richard lived through a small nightmare. Kayla and he proceeded to spend the night awkwardly on the lower bunk bed, talking about the tediousness of schoolwork. When she finally left after 2 hours, Richard's level of self-hate was incalculable. He buried his face in his pillow and pondered why he was such a faggot. He stayed like that for another 3 hours until Jacob finally entered to go to sleep. That was last night. This night, Travis had been Rich's saving grace by inviting him out for a drink. He had been avoiding Jacob the entire day. Somehow he had made it this far without having to talk to him. Now he sat across the table from Travis and did his best to be sociable, which was not coming easy to him at the moment. He tried harder. "Yeah, I'll take another beer," Rich said. He pulled out his wallet and handed Travis a $5 bill. Travis took it and left. Rich sat at the large table alone. His phone vibrated and he checked it anxiously. His heart sank. It was Kayla. He read the message cautiously, slowly. "So, why didn't you kiss me yesterday? LOL. His heart rate increased. He looked wildly around the room for Travis as if that guy could save him. He was somewhere lost at the bar. Rich knew that there would be nothing he could do when he returned anyway. It was up to Rich to solve this problem. So Rich steadied himself with a concentrated breath and texted back, I honestly don't know, LOL. I've been wondering the same thing all day. He sent it. Rich wondered if he had told too much of the truth. He had always been scared of revealing too much of himself to people. He had this ridiculous fear of sending a text to a girl and that girl showing it to all of her friends to make fun of him. He waited for a text back and wondered if that was happening at that exact moment. He pictured the 4 girls he barely knew sitting huddled around Kayla's phone reading his text, making fun of his insecurities and shortcomings. He thought of the hot blonde that he still didn't know the name of. He imagined her laughing the loudest and cringed at the thought. The text came just as Travis returned with more beer. There's this super hot guy sitting at the bar. Fuck, I love straight men. They're so much hotter than fags, Travis said. Rich laughed politely. He focused on trying to make it not sound forced. He thanked Travis for the beer and discreetly opened Kayla's text as he prepared for the worst. What are you doing tonight? Rich slowly took a sip of his beer. He was aware of how awkward Travis must have felt towards Rich's antisocial behavior. He probably regrets fucking inviting me, Rich thought. He hated himself for that. He considered apologizing, but thought better of it. He didn't want to draw attention to it and make things even more awkward. He texted Kayla back. I'm at a bar right now. I should be back at the dorm in an hour, Rich said. She texted back quickly. See you then? So you can make it up to me? LOL. A wave of feelings washed over Richard. Excitement and anticipation, mixed with reluctance and self-pity. He remembered the last time he kissed a girl. It was the fall of last year. The last time he had sex was the summer of that year. Rich realized that he might be doing both in a couple of hours. I don't have a fucking condom, Rich thought, panicked. He looked at Travis and the light bulb turned on above his head. Hey man, so can I ask you an awkward question? Richard said. Travis looked at Rich curiously. He had been doodling on his phone and seemed to welcome the invitation for conversation. What's up? He asked casually. So, I don't have sex on a regular basis. That being said, it looks like I might be doing that tonight. Do you know a good place to buy condoms? Rich asked, eliciting more self-pity. Travis laughed graciously and reached into his back pocket, retrieving his wallet. I'm not having sex tonight. I'm too lazy to try and pick up a guy right now. Take mine, Travis said as he pulled out a Trojan condom from his wallet and offered it to Rich. You sure? Rich asked as he slowly reached for the contraceptive. Sure. Is that what's been distracting you all this time? The prospect of a desirable sex? Travis asked with a smirk. Richard laughed uncomfortably. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. If you never want to hang out with me again, I completely understand, he said in a joking manner. Travis smiled. Just make sure you fuck her good. Then you have made it up to me, he said. You are a scholar and a gentleman, sir, Rich said. The two finished their beers and headed back to the dorm. Rich texted Kayla to come over whenever she was ready. She arrived 10 minutes after he had walked into the door. He met her downstairs. It was his first time signing in a guest. It was odd to him. Kayla handed her license over to the security guard and signed her name down on a sheet. As they headed towards the elevator, Richard noticed the security guard looking after them. He wondered if he knew what was about to happen. The elevator ride was quiet. Kayla leaned against the back wall and slowly tapped her foot in a relaxed manner. The elevator stopped on Rich's floor, and he exited first and opened the door to his dorm. He thanked God for Jacob not being present. He had no idea where his roommate went most nights, but he wouldn't get home until around 2 or 3 in the morning. Rich was thankful for that. He would have the room to himself. They entered Richard's room, and he closed the door. Kayla was the first to sit down. He sat down next to her. So, she said. Rich gave his signature nervous laugh and repeated her. So what did you do today? Kayla asked. I had an evening class that went from 5 to 7:30. Then when I got back, me and Travis went out and got a drink. The same place we went to, actually, Rich said. Kayla leaned forward slightly. So you've been drinking? Kayla asked with a seductive smile. A little bit, Rich said. She leaned closer. Her face was only a few inches from his. Are you drunk? She asked, a small smile spread across his lips. Her lips. Fuck it. Rich closed the gap. He leaned forward and kissed her. She gave an almost instantaneous reaction to the physical contact. Immediately, her hands were on the back of his head, pulling his face towards her. The sudden aggressiveness jolted Richard, making him miss a beat. He tried to recover quickly. He kissed her harder and began grabbing at her back, trying to match her level of intensity. It was hard. Within minutes, she was pulling his shirt off. Richard followed suit and pulled hers off. Next came the pants. She pulled him down on top of her. His dick stood hard against his boxer briefs. She grabbed at it and moaned softly. His dick responded to the touch with a small twitch. Thoughts raced through Richard's head. ideas. He considered what to do next. He thought about taking her bra off, but quickly decided against for fear of taking too with anticipation as he readied himself above her. She took a gasp as he entered her and grabbed at his waist to pull him in further. Richard's body acted independently of his brain. He figured the two would sync up sooner or later. She wrapped her legs across him from behind, locking him into her. She dug her nails into his back and moaned loudly into his ear. He fucked her harder. She grabbed his face with both hands and forced her tongue into his mouth. He didn't have a single second to think. All he could do was focus on keeping up the intensity that Kayla had set. He placed his hand on her throat and pushed himself up, extending his arm fully. Her eyes widened with excitement. His other hand clutched the side of the bed. He put most of his weight onto it. Rich realized he still had his socks on. That bothered him. He buried his feet underneath the sheets to hide them from sight. She whispered into his ear. "Don't stop," Kayla said. "Don't stop." It went on for 10 minutes. Rich gave as good as he got. Whenever she pulled, Rich pushed. Every time she scratched his back, his grip around her throat tightened, and then he had his orgasm. She panted several times as he ceased his thrusting and collapsed to the side of her. She giggled girlishly. That was fun. Richard looked at his phone. Joseph was calling. He finished washing his plate in the kitchen sink and quickly walked into his bedroom, shutting the door behind him. He sat down on his bed and answered the phone. "Sup, man," Rich said. "Sup, New York boy," Joe replied. "Not much, just chillin', living in New York like a true New York boy," Rich said. "How is it living there?" "It's pretty cool. No complaints as of yet. It's taken me this long to finally be confident with the subway system. I think I can just about get wherever I want to go now." That's cool, that's cool. "How is the new school? What are the classes like?" Joe asked. "They're good. I'm taking a script analysis class that is pretty interesting. We actually have to watch Magnolia for that one and analyze the script." "Word? That's awesome. Great fucking movie." "Yeah, I remembered it's one of your favorites," Rich said. A pause happened between the two. Rich waited for Joe to speak. He was just about to offer to hang up the phone until Joseph finally spoke again. "So, I was looking at some places to go for the spring semester. I found this one thing in New York that's being run under Quentin Tarantino's production company. Anyway, it's this directorial program that's really prestigious. You have to sing your work into them, and they only choose 40 students a year, so I think I'm going to try for that," Joe said. Rich rolled his eyes. "Fucking dick measuring," he thought to himself. "That sounds cool, man. Sounds like it'd be a dope thing to have on your resume," he said. "Yeah. What part of New York are you in exactly?" Joe asked. "Manhattan," Rich replied. "Yeah, so is this program. So that's cool," Joe said. "Yeah, Manhattan is pretty cool," Rich said back. He waited. Joe didn't say anything further. Rich seized on the opportunity. "Well, I should probably hit the road. I'm looking into signing up for a gym today," he said. "Oh, word? Trying to lift them weights and shit?" Joe asked. Rich laughed lightly. "Yeah, I'm not really trying to be the only fat person in New York City. I can understand that." "Well, I guess I'll talk to you later," Rich said slowly. "Yeah, I'll talk to you later," Joe said. Rich hung up the phone. He rolled his eyes again and cursed under his breath. It was the first time the two had spoken since Rich had left for the new school, and true to Joey's character, not a single word of congratulations on the acceptance was uttered from his mouth. Instead, he just tried to show off. The whole summer, Joe had been constantly talking about all the colleges he had been accepted to, NYU, UCLA. It was as if Joe's sole purpose in life was to prove that he was better than Richard. "Well, I'm the one fucking in New York, so there's that," Rich muttered to himself. He disliked how annoyed he was. He was hundreds of miles away from Joseph, yet he still had a way of getting under his skin. He tried to shrug it off. Richard opened his phone and scrolled through his contacts, stopping at Shaun's name. Today was Shaun's birthday. He called his number and put the phone to his ear. Shaun answered after one ring. "Hello," Shaun sang happily into the phone. "Happy birthday, man," Rich said. "Richie boy, you are my dearest friend," Shaun exclaimed into the phone. Rich could perfectly picture the width of Shaun's huge smile at that moment. "You're one of the only people I know that actually calls me on my birthday. Everyone else just texts." "Let me guess, me and your mom," Rich said. "Bingo," Shaun said. "Well, that's why I'm your best friend, right?" "So what are you doing? What are you doing for it?" Rich asked. "Fuck what I'm doing. You're the one living in New York. What have you been up to? We haven't talked since you moved. You know I'm planning to visit you ASAP, right?" Shaun said. "Totally, man. Just let me know when you want to. It's been cool. I've only been here for 2 weeks, but school is still school. The only difference is that it's in New York," Rich said with a small laugh. "I don't want to fucking hear about school. Listen, it's my birthday. Give me some fucking details. What's your day like? You're living in New York, man. Come on. Throw me a bone." Rich laughed again. "Well, what do you want to know, man?" "Okay, I'll force feed you questions if that's what you want." What are your roommates like? They're all cool. There's 2 gay ones and 1 quiet Indian guy, Rich said. Tell me about the gay ones, Shaun said. Well, there's Travis, who is actually just a really cool dude. He's one of those gay guys that aren't, like, super flamboyant about it. Like, you can tell after meeting him that he's gay, but that's pretty much as far as it goes. Then there's Jacob, who's just like the stereotype gay guy, flamboyant and shit. He said he wants to fuck Christopher, Richard said, laughing. What? Shaun exclaimed. He saw pictures of him? You showed them young folks comedy videos? Nah, he just likes looking at straight guys, Rich replied. Do you see a picture of me? What do you think? Shaun asked quickly. Rich laughed at Shaun's vanity. Yeah, he saw you. He said you were cute, but that he likes Chris more. The funniest part is that he's black. Fuck him. Going against his own race and shit. Did he even see me shirtless? Shaun asked angrily. Pretty sure he did, Rich said, laughing. I think he's a fucking idiot if he'd rather fuck Chris over me then, Shaun said. Anyway, change the subject. How are the girls up there? Is it unbearable? Any hotties in your classes? Yeah, a lot of hot girls here, man. Fucking just girls in dresses has got to be my favorite thing to look at in life, Rich said, sighing. I've heard that before, Italy boy. That's cool, though. Any prospective fucks? Shaun asked eagerly. Rich winced. He was hoping Shaun would not ask that question. Yet now that he did, he couldn't lie to him. He spoke slowly. There's this one girl I kind of already had sex with, Richard said. He tensed his body, waiting for Shaun's response. Shaun screamed something inaudible into the phone so loud that Rich had to pull it away from his ear. You're fucking kidding me. 2 fucking weeks and you're already fucking? Fucking Christ, I didn't know you had it in you. Why didn't you tell me? Shaun asked, sounding hurt. It kind of just happened, actually, Rich said. Yeah, right. That's your answer for everything these days. Well, that's fucking awesome. I'm happy for you. What's her name and is she hot? Shaun asked. Her name is Kayla, and she's alright. She's small and Jewish. She had her nose done, Rich said. Damn. My man Richie boy fucking a New Yorker who got her nose done. That's classic. Was it a one-night stand, or are you 2 seeing each other regularly? I guess you could say regularly. That's awesome, man. I'm proud of you. When I come up, I want to meet her, Shaun said. That's never going to happen, Rich thought. Sure, he said out loud. Well, I wish we could continue talking, but I have to get off the phone. I'm on a train visiting Sanem at her college. She's actually taking me to New York today. Go figure, Shaun said. Oh yeah? Where to? She wants to treat me to dinner at some Persian restaurant that she says is really good. It's free food in New York, so it can't be that bad. Plus I get to have a beer with my meal, Shaun said. Rich laughed. Well, have fun, man. I hope you enjoy it. I'll be seeing you soon, Richie boy. I'm going to come up there and get a beer with you. You'll show me around, Shaun said. Sounds good, man. Goodbye, Richie boy, Shaun said. Later, man, Rich said and hung up. Shaun. The train stopped at Newark Penn Station shortly after Shaun hung up the phone with his friend. He teetered on the edge of his feet anxiously. He hadn't seen his girlfriend for a week. It had been the longest they'd ever been away. He stood up and walked over to the exit doors and waited for them to open. He exited the train as soon as they did and walked into the center of the station. He realized that he didn't even have the address of her dorm, nor did he know how to get there. He had made the mistake in assuming that she would be waiting for him at the train station. People bustled and moved all around him. Shaun looked to his right and saw the entrance of the train station. There were taxis parked outside. Easy enough, Shaun thought. He pulled out his phone and texted Sanem. I never asked you for your address, LOL. All this time I had forgotten. He waited for her to text back. A minute passed as he stood still, waiting for the phone's vibration. He shrugged and searched out the men's bathroom. He entered and began washing his hands in the sink. He looked at himself in the mirror. Every article of clothing he wore was new. $100 Calvin Klein jacket covered his $40 Express t-shirt. He wore a pair of $100 Guess jeans. His shoes were $70 black Pumas. He walked stiffly in them and feared that after time spent in New York, they would quickly hurt his feet. Sanem had chosen the wardrobe after a short shopping spree the two had had before she left for school. It was on that day that Shaun gave her title of girlfriend. And I already miss her after 1 week, Shaun chuckled to himself. He dried his hands and left the bathroom. He checked his phone to see if Sanem had texted him back. As soon as he grabbed it, he felt it vibrate. He read her text. Don't take taxi. Take the city subway to Rutgers and get off there. Shaun looked up at the signals posted around the building and quickly found the arrow that pointed him in the direction of the city subway. He turned right and headed off in that direction. Shaun took stairs that led him below. He could hear a subway train slugging off down the tunnel and hoped there would be another one soon. In front of him stood a large map of the subway stops and stations. It went all throughout Newark. Shaun frowned. He found the spot marked Rutgers campus on the map, but from what he could tell, there were 2 possible stops he could get off to get there. Shaun sighed and pulled out his phone again to text his girlfriend. He had no service down in the tunnel, so he quickly trotted back up the stairs. "Which stop do I get off at, Warren Street or Washington?" Shaun sent the text and waited. He considered calling her, but decided that would show too much care. He didn't want to come off irritated. The truth was, he was scared of Sinem. He had worked with her for 7 months as a server at the diner. He had seen how bitchy she could get with customers, managers, and coworkers alike. He didn't want to see that side of her come out, not towards him. It wasn't that he was afraid that he couldn't handle it. Shaun was afraid that if it happened, he would stop liking her. So he waited another minute and threw up his hands in dismay. He headed back downstairs and walked up to someone who was looking at the map closely. It was a tall black female. "Excuse me, ma'am," Shaun said politely. "I was wondering if you could help me out. I'm trying to get to the Rutgers campus, but I'm not sure which stop I should get off at. Warren Street and Washington Street both look to be in the same vicinity." The woman looked at Shaun confused. "I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure," she said. "I think I saw some kids the other day talking about Warren, but they might have been going to NGIT. I would take Warren, though, just to be on the safe side. It looks like you could take either one." Shaun smiled warmly. He always thought of his mother whenever he interacted with strangers. He mimicked her mannerisms whenever he was in such a situation. "You know, that was exactly what I was thinking. Thanks for the second vote, though. Warren Street it is," Shaun said. The woman laughed at Shaun and said, "You're quite welcome. I hope I didn't give you bad advice." Shaun chuckled at that and left the woman. He found the ticket station and quickly received his stub for the subway. He sat down on one of the 2 wooden benches available and waited patiently. The tall woman sat down at the other bench. The train came within minutes. It was a small one with only 3 or 4 cars. The electronic door slid open. Shaun allowed the woman to enter first before following. She smiled at him as she passed. Warren Street was 3 stops away. Shaun didn't bother sitting. After 5 minutes passed, Shaun was exiting the subway and coming out into the daylight for the first time since he had left his house that morning. It was 2 o'clock. 10 more hours of my birthday, Shaun thought. He smiled. The sun shined brightly over his head. Good weather could always put him in a good mood. His phone buzzed sporadically in his pocket. He pulled it out and looked at 3 new text messages from Sinem. He figured he was receiving them now because of the lack of service in the tunnel. "You pick which station, LOL," the first text read. "Take Warren," the next text read. "Shaun," the last text read. Shaun sighed and shook his head. He chose to look at the situation humorously. He texted her back. "I just got off at Warren. Where would you like me to go now?" Shaun was beginning to get mildly agitated. Again she was taking her time to text back. He stood around at the entrance of the subway station feeling like an idiot. His new clothes felt awkward and uncomfortable on his body. All he wanted was to kiss his girlfriend and get the show underway. Finally she texted back after another 2 minutes passed. "You're going to see a really tall building from the entrance of the subway tunnel. Walk towards that," Sinem said. Shaun looked around. "I'm in a fucking city." Tall buildings surrounded him. He looked at one building in particular that seemed taller than the rest. He turned around and did another look over, just to make sure. He looked back at his choice. He scratched his head and walked towards the building. His face was scrunched, something Shaun did often when he was unsure of himself. "This is stupid," Shaun thought and stopped walking. He called Sinem. "Hello?" Sinem answered the phone after a couple of rings. "I don't know what tall building you're talking about, Sinem." Shaun did his best to keep the irritation out of his voice. Sinem laughed. "Oh, Shaun," her voice sounded patronizing. "I'll be right down to get you." "Please do," Shaun said, keeping a sweet tone. He turned around and walked back to the entrance of the subway and waited. He looked left and right, waiting to see a familiar figure walking towards him. After 5 minutes he did. She was wearing pink pants and a white polo. He recognized it as the Lacoste shirt she often wore. She walked slowly, her eyes cast downward as she focused on whoever she was texting from her phone. Her hair was down and she wore her new DKNY watch that she had bought that last time the two were together. His heartbeat sped up. It was a curious feeling. He had felt anger while he waited for her, but as soon as he saw her, that anger simply melted away. Now he wanted nothing more than to hold her. He walked slowly over to her, taking care to match her speed. Shaun did not want to seem anxious. The two approached each other. She slipped her phone into her small purse and stared up at Shaun. She smiled sweetly. Shaun looked at her smile and realized how much he had missed it. She had a jagged incisor that jutted out at a somewhat odd angle. Sometimes, if she wasn't paying attention, when she closed her mouth, that tooth would stick out, looking like a vampire's fang. Shaun had never liked a girl with imperfect teeth until her. "Hey," Sinem said. Shaun longed to hear more of her accent. "Hey? That's not enough. You're supposed to wish me happy birthday," he said jokingly. She laughed and stood on her toes to kiss him on the cheek. "Happy birthday," she whispered softly into his ear. He smiled, his heart beat even faster. All's well that ends well. Shaun looked at her. "Did I ever tell you that I love when your hair is down?" he asked. Sinem laughed again and said, "Yes, you have." "Oh, then have I ever told you that I love your smile?" "You've told me that you love everything about me," Sinem said, smiling. "I said that?" Shaun asked humorously. "Yes, you did. And you wore your jacket. I thought you were going to forget," she said excitedly. "You asked me to wear it on my birthday. When have I ever forgotten anything that you've asked me?" Shaun asked. Sinem smiled and took his hand. "Come on, let's go to my dorm," she said as she led him away from the subway entrance. The two walked a short distance, chatting about inconsequential things. Sinem led her into an apartment building where she stayed. They took an elevator up to the 5th floor. Shaun kissed her inside the small compartment as soon as the doors closed. Her hands reached for his face immediately, pulling him further towards her. The elevator opened and she walked directly across the hall towards a door marked 501. "This is me," she said, unlocking the door. "My roommates have been waiting to meet you." The two entered together. The layout of the dorm was simple. When a person first entered, there was the living room. To the left of that was the kitchen, and to the right was a long hallway with 2 open doors on the left wall, and 1 closed door on the right. Shaun heard voices coming from that hall. "Hello," Sinem called to the large room. "We're back." "Oh my God, bring him in here, I want to see him," an excited female voice echoed from the furthest door. Sinem laughed and beckoned Shaun to follow her. Shaun groaned inside of his head. He hated meeting people. He especially hated meeting girls. He especially hated meeting girls when he already had a girlfriend. To him, the whole thing was superfluous. Shaun had always been willing to do whatever was necessary in order to get a girl into his bed. But once that feat was accomplished, he lost all motivation to maintain social interactions. The only time he liked going to a party was when he was single. He would go with the hope of meeting a girl he could potentially have sex with. When Shaun acquired a girlfriend, which was a habit he had grown into over the last several years, he had no urge to go to parties or to socialize with anyone besides a small group of friends and girlfriend. That's just the way Shaun was. Yet he knew that Sinem wanted to show off her handsome black boyfriend to her roommates. He also knew why he was wearing the clothes she had picked out for him, all to maintain the image of success. Shaun understood the concept, but he disagreed with it entirely. He had no interest in impressing people who served no purpose in his life. Yet he was with someone that did. He grit his teeth and put on his fake smile as Sinem knocked on the first open door. Inside were 2 average-looking females. One was blonde, the other was black. They looked at Shaun in a disinterested manner and said all the niceties that came with meeting a roommate's boyfriend. They don't even fucking care, Shaun thought. His stomach grumbled. He tried to calm himself. Soon he would have Sinem all to himself, lost in the concrete jungle that was New York. That thought comforted him. She brought Shaun to the next room. "This one is my room," she said as she entered. Shaun followed behind her. A skinny little Indian girl sat on one of the 2 beds, texting rapidly. She looked up and screamed, "Oh my God, this is him!" The girl stood up and walked over to Shaun and stuck out her hand. Shaun took it gracefully. "I'm just letting you know now, your girlfriend is going to be my new best friend. I absolutely love her." Sinem giggled mirthfully and hugged her new roommate. "Shaun, this is Patricia. She's my roommate," Sinem said. "I can see that," Shaun said with a small smile. Shaun had always thought he stepped into the nice boyfriend role quite easily. Parents and siblings always loved him. Sinem's family didn't know he existed, but Shaun was sure that when he did meet them, they would definitely like him. It was why he was learning Persian, to impress her mother and father. Her roommates, on the other hand, Shaun had no motivation to impress, so he smiled warmly and waited for the attention to be taken off of him. He didn't have to wait long. At first observation, Shaun pegged Patricia as someone with ADD. She talked a mile a minute and changed topics every 30 seconds. "Oh my God, Shaun, you have no idea how much me and Sinem have in common," Patricia said. "We both have the same style of fashion. You should see our closet. We have like the same clothes in there, and we both have black boyfriends. Has she told you about mine? I don't know why I like black guys so much, but I do. Wait, is that awkward for you, that I'm talking about this kind of stuff in front of you?" Shaun was about to answer before she cut him off and began talking to Sinem again. I guess it was a fucking rhetorical question, he thought, annoyed. Shaun discreetly tugged on the back of Sinem's shirt. She cut off mid-sentence and looked at Shaun knowingly. "Oh, am I holding you guys up?" It's your birthday, right? I'm such an idiot. You two have plans. You guys go. I'll be here when you get back. You're sleeping over tonight, right, Shaun? I already talked to Sanem about it. We're cool. My boyfriend's going to sleep over once in a while, too, so if she's cool with that, then you can sleep over as much as you like, Patricia said. It was nice meeting you, Patricia, Shaun said gently. He exited the room quickly. Sanem followed soon after. She looked at Shaun and laughed silently. She shook her head and hurriedly led him out of the dorm. She's crazy, right? Sanem asked. I'm sure she means well, Shaun said politely. They stood in front of the elevator waiting. Okay, so before we go to New York, which is like 10 minutes away from Newark Penn Station, I have to meet with my advisor first and straighten some things out, Sanem said. Shaun frowned. He hadn't eaten all day. How long is that going to take? He asked. Sanem covered her top lip with her bottom one and shrugged. It shouldn't take long at all. Maybe 20 minutes, she said. Doesn't sound too bad. Just make sure you hurry, though. I'm very hungry. Sanem smiled at Shaun and kissed him on the cheek again. I'll be fast, I promise. An hour later, Shaun was sitting on a cushioned bench inside of a large building marked Rutgers Business School. He was about 10 yards away from the entrance. Sanem had sit him down there 50 minutes ago and told him non-students weren't allowed to go beyond that point. She scratched his head and kissed his cheek and told him she'd be back soon. She had said that 50 minutes ago. Shaun wished he had brought headphones. He could have been listening to music the whole time he was waiting. He did a good job rationalizing what was going on. He imagined Sanem sitting down across the table from the advisor and finding out some huge problem that had not yet been addressed. He imagined that her schedule was mistakenly erased from the computers and they were spending these 50 minutes making a new one with all the same classes. The rationalization worked for Shaun. He could sit and wait for another hour with that in his head. He wondered why she didn't text him. He would have texted her as soon as the promised time of 20 minutes elapsed, had the roles been reversed. Had the roles been reversed, I would have met her at the fucking train station, Shaun thought bitterly. He tried to push the negativity away. He did not want that. It was his birthday and he wanted to be happy with his new girlfriend. Too bad I'm not spending my birthday with my girlfriend. He chastised himself and redirected his brain to recent memories. He thought of the last time he had sex with Sanem. They had started making out in the car after they had gotten home from their shopping spree. They quickly carried the bags inside and dropped them at the door. He carried her up the 2 flights of stairs, feeling like a hero, kissing her the entire time. He laid her down gently on his bed and undressed her slowly and tenderly, kissing her body parts the entire time. When he entered her, he asked her to tell him whatever it was she was thinking that moment. Sanem had blushed at that. Shaun could tell that she was hesitant, so being the wonderful guy that he was, he compromised. Tell me in Persian, he had asked her. Sanem made him promise not to Google the phrase. Shaun had laughed at that. She acted like such a shy little girl sometimes. He promised her he wouldn't Google the phrase. Then she said it. Seni seviyorum, she had said. Shaun made her say it again as he thrust inside of her. He remembered how she had moaned the words out of her mouth. Seni çok seviyorum. Shaun sat on the cushioned bench and pondered what those words meant. To his word, he had not looked them up on the internet. He knew he would find out eventually. He looked at the time. She had been with the advisor for an hour and she had made no efforts to communicate with him. She'll tell me tonight. That'll be her compensation for this, Shaun thought. He hated how aware he was of all the deals he made in his own head in order to keep smiling. He knew his natural reaction was to be angry or at least thoroughly irritated at the chain of events that had taken place today. Instead, Shaun bargained with himself. He told himself lies and foolish compensations all so he could not be angry with the girl of his dreams, the girl who was better than all the others he had ever been with, the girl who was better than himself, the girl that he had to impress with a college education and more money. He needed her much more than she needed him. Without her, I'm nothing. It means I love you, Sanem said shyly. She looked away from him and waited for his response. The two sat on a bench not far from the Persian restaurant they had just left. The hour was late, but people still walked the streets. Dog owners trotted past the young couple. The yellow streetlights cast the wide brick sidewalk in a bronze hue. Shaun was finally at the place that he had wanted to be on his birthday. Alone with Sanem in the midst of a great city lost to the rest of the world on a wooden bench. And she told him she loved him. Seni seviyorum, translated to, I love you. They had been dating for a month and a half. You love to get fucked, Shaun wanted to yell at her. He wanted her to understand the difference because he was sure that she didn't. She was 2 years older than Shaun, which added to the sense of pride he felt when he had her on his arm. He didn't know what to say. He wanted to slap her and tell her that she was ruining everything. He wanted to make her understand that she didn't know him well enough to love him. Not yet. You love me, Shaun repeated. Sinem nodded her head in affirmation, but still kept her head turned away from him. Shaun's hand caressed her small shoulder. He loved her shoulder just as much as he loved her nose, just as much as he loved her pelvic bone, just as much as he loved her feet, just as much as he loved everything else on her. He stared at the ground, thinking of what to say next. I've been hiding things from you, Sinem, Shaun started off slowly. She turned her head and looked into his face. Worry lined her eyes. What kind of things? She asked quietly. I've been keeping certain things a secret about myself that I didn't want you to know about. Ever since we started dating, I've been on my best behavior with you. What you've seen is the best person I can be, but it's not all of me. Do you understand? Sinem looked at him confused. Are you saying you've been fake? Shaun shook his head. I haven't been fake. I've just been my best self. Okay, this is going to sound stupid, but have you ever heard of the comic book character Two-Face? Sinem shook her head. Shaun continued. What about the angel and the devil on the shoulder? You've seen that in movies and TV shows, right? On one shoulder there's the angel telling the person to do good things, and then on the other side there's the devil, right? This time Sinem nodded her head in understanding. Okay, well, I've got that going on all the time. Two sides to me. What you've seen for the entirety of this relationship is my good side, my well-mannered, good-natured side. What I'm trying to explain to you is that side does not come easy to me. I've been living as a bad guy for most of my life. I came to you because I thought you would fix me. I wanted to live up to your expectations. I wanted to climb to where you were standing and have us look at each other as equals. That's what I want. Then what's the problem? Sinem asked. Shaun sighed. I don't know what the problem is. I don't even know why I'm telling you this. I guess I just want you to understand more of who I am before you start making declarations of love. He took a moment. I left myself no choice but to fall in love with you, Sinem. When we started, I told myself that I would try my best to be the man that you wanted me to be. To tell you the truth, I hoped that I would fail. I hoped that no matter how hard I tried, you would end up leaving me for someone better. Someone with more money and a college degree or something like that. I was planning to use that to fuel myself. I wanted you to break my heart so I could go on and do great things with myself. I'm so tired of being the bad guy, Sinem. I don't want to do it anymore. Sinem leaned closer to Shaun and took his face in her hands. She kissed him hard. The kiss made Shaun feel worse. The realization hit him like a slap to the face. Sinem was not going to leave him. He had succeeded. He had taken this Persian virgin to his home and seduced her. He had put on his best show for her, and it was enough. He looked nice in the new clothes she had picked out for him. Shaun found himself kissing her back. He matched her aggression and passion. The two clawed at each other's faces, drawing them further into each other's mouths. The feeling of depression Shaun had previously felt transformed into elation. So what? The words came to him from space. So what? He repeated in his head. So what that we're in love with each other? Worse things have happened to people. He felt giddy. He was in love. He was in love and he acknowledged it. It scared him to do so, but in that moment, Shaun refused to let that fear diminish him. They sat on that bench in the middle of New York for a long time. Their faces never left the others for more than half a breath. Shaun did not think about tomorrow or next month or next year. All he thought about was the now, and in that now, Shaun was unabashedly happy.